I'm Idan. I'm the CEO of a company named Reflective, Israeli cybersecurity company. I founded the company with my co-founder Israel 4 years ago. And Reflective is actually in a very unique area in the cybersecurity landscape. And the idea that Reflective is trying to protect or help companies that have some kind of online assets, a website or mobile application and such, to protect themselves against the new generation of threats. And when I'm saying a new generation of threats, I'm usually talks about the connection between the outside world and the internal development. And I'm thinking about third parties code, frameworks, open sources. So if you will think 5 years to the past, even 10 years, most of the code was internally created code. You have your R&D department created your own tools and applications. Maybe you have your QA, verify that the code is excellent, and then you're going to production to go live. But what we saw in Reflective is that now your sites are actually consist of actually dozens of other applications. We are calling them digital applications. Code from the internet, client-side code, repositories, open sources, other vendors that all of them are part of your asset, part of your site. And because of that, your whole process is not really helping anymore. It's helping, it's very important to protect your own code, but then Reflective is trying to help you maintain your security level while connecting yourself to the outside world in so many ways. On myself, my entire career is cybersecurity from the army, as a cybersecurity researcher, then from managing a few companies in the offensive security world, even started a different startup before. So my career is cybersecurity all the way. In the past, when you wanted to hack a website, it's actually even happened today, but in the past, it's always like this. You try to find vulnerabilities on the servers, on the site itself. We had attacks named like SQL injections, authentication bypass. And we're trying to find vulnerabilities on the website, at my target, in order to get hold on the site itself and collect data. So if you have something called SQL injection, you actually can run queries on the database and pull data, business data. And if you have authentication bypass, you can bypass the login procedures or security tools and then get access to sensitive data. What we saw in the last few years is that we have good security today to protect your servers. We have pretty good securities. We have what we call WAF and IPS, IDS, a lot of external attack scanners. So in order to find an SQL injection in a bank, probably won't happen. I guess theoretically can happen, but it won't be easy to do it. In order to find authentication bypass in a login in a big retailer, it's possible, but it's very rare. So what we saw that attackers are trying to find a new way to penetrate organization, and new ways to get a hold of sensitive data or PII data. And this new way is not to attack the site directly. Is not to find vulnerability specifically in the server or in the web applications. It's to look at all the connections the site have, all the external entities that it connected with, all the open sources, all the stuff that it loaded, and trying to get a hold from there to the site. And it's actually very reasonable because if you have a lot of walls, if you build high walls protecting your own servers, you probably didn't build the same walls when you have connected with so many vendors outside. And that's the way websites are built today. They are built of mix-max of different vendors and tools. So we can still see attacks like SQL injection. I'm not saying you won't find SQL injection today, but it will be a bit more rare, and especially for big enterprises that have a lot of experience and security tools in order to prevent this kind of attack, it won't help you easily. And that's the new attack that we are seeing. And I think when you think about supply chain, that's what we saw in the news in the last 2 to 3 years, supply chain attacks. The idea to penetrate or get access to a site or asset, it can be software, it can be website, it can be mobile application, by its connections, by its API, by its other vendor that's working with it. So there is a terms in security saying that you're only strong as your weakest link. So if you have a big security department in your company and you invest a lot of money in protecting your site, probably one of your supply chain is not investing in security as much as you. And probably one of them maybe did one mistake. So instead of going to the high wall and try to bypass the most advanced security team, why not hack the small supplier that maybe have less resource than you to invest in security? Maybe you don't have the big security team that you have today in order to protect yourself. So by supply chain attacks or by third-party breach or by any other of API connections, you might be able to get the same data, even more, by the way, even more, because maybe you can breach several companies in one attack. But the same data that you will have got from hacking the company itself, without all the efforts of bypassing a lot of security tools and a lot of security personnel and budget invested to protect you from that. It's a classic weakest link scenario. Find the weakest link to hack. So if you now go deeper specifically to the website, as I told you, websites are consist of applications today. And the main reason they are there is to enhance the experience of the user. That's the reason they're on the client side. That's the reason the site install them. You want to have the integration to Facebook and Google. You want to have analytics of what they're clicking, what they're doing. They want to have a better graph, better visibility, better browsing experience. The core reason we have those applications is to make your website dynamic, to make your website easy to use, fun, and of course to make you return to it. And to do all of that, and to make the experience to the users, you need to know the stuff on the user. That's the idea. So in order to make a good experience, you need to know the type of computer the user is using, and where he's coming from, and maybe where he lived, and maybe how much time he visited you in the past, and maybe what he did before he came to visit your sites. And here is when you started to have some kind of privacy parts or concerns. So when you need to collect data on the user in order to enhance his experience, the second question you need to ask is, what is the data you're going to collect? And do you really need it? And today, when you think about digital applications or third-party applications, all of them are collecting data from the users. Some of them is enough only to know the IP or maybe the location where you're browsing, or just to know if you're a mobile phone or computer. But some of them need to have a lot more data on you. For example, and that's famous for Facebook. So Facebook have a lot of advertising in the platform. That's the main revenue stream. And how they decide which advertise to give you. If you want to know to buy bicycles, or you want to, I don't know, to go on vacation. Facebook, as a third party, digital application, have what we are calling tracker in many websites around the world. I think around 30% of the websites around the world have what we call Facebook tracker or Facebook Connect, which actually tracks the users, you, myself, when you are browsing, and see which pages are we visiting and what we care about. So if they saw that we just went for several travel companies in order to maybe to book a flight, now you'll get advertised on Facebook platforms with a cheap deal for traveling. So the idea is that in order to them to make the work, they need to collect data, and that's actually what they're doing. And sometimes, or actually most of the times, the site owner doesn't really know about it. I mean, he knows that they are collecting data, but he's not aware of what's data, how they're collecting, is it possible to limit some of the collection, and do they really need it? And we saw it with GDPR today, or CCPA. This is a new challenge for companies to be protected. But as a concept that we took from the security world, and Reflective is doing it, and other companies doing it, the beginning is what we're calling discovery. You first need to know who are those third parties. I know it sounds strange, and you say to yourself, wait, of course I know that I have Facebook on my site. I decided to edit them. It's a bit more complicated on the website. You have third parties, you have fourth parties, you have vendors of vendors, you have open source that loading other repositories. So the first stage, and it's very basic, is to list all those applications. And it's not easy task to do it, if to be honest. Now, you probably from the security team doesn't even aware of 50% of them. The marketing added few, the developers added few, the digital added few, some exist already from the beginning of the website. It's a mess. So first task is list this application, know what you have on your website. If it's something that belongs to the marketing, ask the marketing, do you need it? You will be surprised that they probably don't even using it because it's something from the past. And create the inventory. It's an important concept in security. Create the inventory, the asset management of which applications are running on my site. Once you have that, and that can take you with tools like Reflect is 10 minutes. If you're doing alone, it can take you months, but I guess other competitors maybe can do it also fast. Then you have the second phase, which understanding which data they are collecting. Now, that's not easy stuff to do. There are the basic type of data, like IP, geolocations, user, browser, and such, which is very easy to understand what they're collecting. But the more challenge is to discover if they're collecting any actual PII data on specific action. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you are a healthcare website, and you have a script that's running on your account, personal account details, that's saying all the appointments that you have in the past for doctors. In order to see if some of the third parties is collecting this data, you actually need to simulate a full behavior in order to understand if someone collecting this data. You need to actually go to this page and insert specific data and then monitor the network to see if they are collecting data. It can be done, but it's complicated. For that, I will advise any company to use tools that are doing it. There are some either cookie consent tools or scanners tools that are trying to map all these type of locations. But that's important to say only after first one. Without the discovery, without the inventory, you won't be able to understand what's going on. So once you already map all the data, you remove 50% unneeded applications, you map the data, then it's time to make the classic risk management and to decide. So you need to make sure that you have an owner for each of those applications in your company. So let's say if the marketing decided they need to have Facebook, you need to decide to tell them that you are the owners of the need of Facebook in the company. Say to list for them what type of data Facebook is collecting from the previous phase. And then you're able to know if it's okay or not okay. And it's okay to say we need Facebook and it's okay that Facebook doing tracking. It's a revenue stream and it's perfectly fine. But then you need like GDPR, for instance, required you to inform the user about it, to allow him to block it or to allow him to not collect data on him. And of course, to allow him to delete it afterward if needed. That's something that the vendor is supposed to do. So they're actually, after the discovery and the data mapping, then you have to define the owner for its application. And lastly, it has to decide if you want this type of data to be collected or not. If you want this data to be collected, inform the user, allow him to choose it, allow him to ignore it, and of course, let him know about it. If we decide to not to use it, perfect. That is the part. Remove it from the website or reach out to the vendor and ask him to not collect this data. It's sometimes that's configuration issue. For instance, in Google, Facebook, and all of them, you can decide. Collect first name, don't collect last name. Collect this page, don't collect this page. I know it sounds like a long process, and to be honest, it's a bit easy. I mean, when GDPR started and brought to the world, it created havoc in companies because they need to the first time to map their user data and business data. But today there are good tools that can help you speed things up. You can finish it instead of weeks and months, you can finish it in days if you do it in a smart way. So privacy and security, it's many times connected, but it's not the same. So if until now we talked in the last answer, that's where we talk about the privacy aspect of collecting the data and mapping the user. The key important stuff in privacy is to inform your clients, your users, and to allow them the options to decide if they want it or not. That's the idea of privacy. It's sometimes to be confused with security. So in security, you don't want to be breached and you don't want to attackers to get your business data. In privacy, the idea is to provide rights to your customers in order to decide what you are doing with the data. I agree that there are sometimes a lot of correlation between the subjects. So if you will ask me, how you protect your site against third-party application, I will tell you more or less the same answer. Discover those applications, map what they are doing, or in this insecurity aspect, what they are doing, where they are coming, are they using insecure services, insecure protocol, insecure code, and then define an owner for them and decide if you want to keep them or not. So the process is a bit more the same. The biggest change is the final step. So in privacy, the final step is to inform your user anyway, if you decide to use a third party, and to allow him to ignore it or block it or to allow it in any browsing experience. In security, you don't need to do it. In security, you just need to make sure that it's part of your security standard. So if you have security standards saying that vendors don't have access to, username and password data, unless they are defined as critical vendors and are enforcing in security standard, that's the final step. You need to verify that the security standard is implemented on your website. So there is similarity, but the process is a bit different in that area. Today, what you're doing with your vendors, it's you're creating them a questionnaire, ask them, are you going to do something bad? Did you do something bad? Are you bad? And they probably will answer, no, we are not bad and we are the best in security. And then you define them a risk level based on the type of data and access they are supposed to get. And once in a year, doing like kind of review. And it's okay, I guess, in the past, but it's not really working today anymore. The connection is much tight. The digitalization is much automatic. Today, a vendor actually have full access to the environment from remote. It's not like in the past. And for that, you need a better solution. You can't just make questionnaire and not for good. They actually have a full field today in cybersecurity in TPRM called security rating, trying to rate vendors. But we believe that the only way to do a real security for your vendors is to implement the same concept of we had in application security to the vendors. So if you have your own code running on what we are calling today DAST, like dynamic application security testing, you need to run your vendor's code on dynamic application security testing. How you do it? You need, I guess, tools like Reflective, but in any case, you need to run the code. You need to run the code, you not run the accents, see what they're actually collecting, and then to understand if they're doing what they're supposed to do or not. And sometimes they're doing what they're supposed to do and it's perfect and you just need to update your policy. Sometimes they're not doing what they're supposed to do and then you can discover it and protect it before a damage has been done. And sometimes they are being the one that's being breached and you need to protect yourself and block the attack. But the idea that the same concept of application security, classic application security, should be implemented when you think about third parties code. You need to validate the code and make sure it's not doing something it's not supposed to do. Not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. And because of that, I will advise you to, first of all, as I told you in the previous step, discover which third-party applications exist, and then try to prioritize them based off their level of risk. If they are on your online account pages, they are sensitive. If they are only on the marketing website and don't have any access to user data, maybe prioritize it later. But the concept of discovery, monitor, prioritization is critical here. You don't want to try to fix all of them. You don't have the resource, time, or expertise for that. You want to find the 5, 10 ones that have actual access to sensitive locations and pulled your own security standard like you had in application security on them. It's not always available or not always possible to do. But then you can use tools that will help you do it and make sure that you are on the right spot, or at least nothing is really broken there. Okay, so from a regulation perspective, and I think every CISO knows that there are too many regulations today. There are for every site, every company have their industry regulation, website regulation, PCI. I think there are in big companies there are full departments that only trying to understand what are the regulations and compliance need that you need to have in order to enforce, in order to have a website or to have some kind of online activity. But let's try to divide it in order to make it easy for our listeners. You have what we are calling security regulation or security compliance regulations, and you have the privacy stuff. From security, it's not something new. We had in the past vendor risk regulation that's trying to make sure that you're using vendors and you have some kind of monitoring ability from security point of view of the vendors. Not only from security, also from general risk management, but from security. You have website security standard like PCI that you need to make sure that if you have credit card numbers, they are being secured, PCI DSS. So there are a lot of security standards that we are used to work with. Reflectors, of course, can help you to discover, as we told you, to discover, monitor, and verify the security standard is being enforced in your site. And in the end, it's all about knowing what you have. I mean, if you look at most of the security standard, in the end, the basic is to know what you have. You need to have the inventory, you need to have the visibility, and then you can make decisions. Because if you don't know which are the third parties that you are running, or not even third parties, that's open sources, how can you make decisions and understand if they're okay or not okay? How can you decide of the risk they're creating? You need to first have the discovery process, and then you actually, I think, you finish 70-80% of the task, or at least the hard task there. What we got in the last few years is the new area of privacy compliance. And GDPR is a widely used term, but also CCPA. And it's not only California today. There are, I think, 4 other companies that embrace it completely. And those privacy created a new challenge. And as I told you in the beginning, now you need to think about the rights of your consumers, of your clients. And it's a different question. It's not protect my company, like security compliance. Don't protect the company from breach, protect my client's data and give them the ability to decide what you are doing with the data. So it's a different compliance, and you have all of them running together. You need to protect your site from security, like if it's a security standard, you need to provide the rights to your customers. And for that, you will need a lot of internal work with the mapping, monitoring, and as I told you in the beginning, the update of the privacy policy, update of security policy, verify that what you actually request is actually happen, and all of them together. So CISO, good luck. You have a lot of tasks on your head.